someone was asking, what do they do with the green gear, the Masterwork gear that they get from Fractals, which doesn't have any upgrades in it? And just my suggesting that one of the potential options for them was vendoring it got me like 3 or 4 passive aggressive DMs from people saying, stop talking about this.
Hey guys, if you take that real money, you'll probably be able to get more gold just converting your money into gems and then trading for gold, because all these methods take time. Like if you do UNIDs, like the only way you make a lot of gold doing UNIDs is by processing a lot of UNIDs. Like it's not a get rich quick scheme.
Where a lot of videos on YouTube, I'm not gonna say any names, but you probably already know where I'm going with this, is that it was a very simple, here's how you can get rich, buy this, sell this, and then the item just tanks after the video's out for 10 minutes. Wow, what a return to this set. I haven't seen this in a while. It's the Barons Club podcast, gamers, and I'm joined today by Enko and Abree. You know, this is actually a very last moment podcast. However, now it's 4 wins. Given that it is 4 wins, Enko hit me up and he was like, yeah, we need to talk about this. And I said, you know what, why not? And then a day later, I hit up Abree. We need to talk about this. And he's like, I had plans on Saturday, but then, you know, the gold always wins. So there we go. And now we're here. We've made a return. The Barons Club are back. Anyway, I'm Gildem, and before we get into our topics today, 4 wins, of course, we'll also be talking about secrets of the obscure later on into this discussion. Just, you know, briefly for the audience at home, I'm pretty sure we share the same audience, but for those who might not know, Abree and Enko, would you mind introducing yourselves? Abree, if you want to go first.
I'm Abree. I used to make gold. Sometimes I still do. Make videos about gold making on YouTube.
Hey, I'm Enko. I stream on Twitch for Guild Wars 2. Don't raid as much as I used to because I don't have a static. Well, I guess I did just get a new static. But yeah, mainly right now we've been opening Zephyrite boxes on stream for a very large loss. But other than that, yep, still making gold. Probably going to be doing a lot of stuff for Secrets of the Obscure. And yeah, we'll see what happens.
So actually, to go with 4 wins, because this is a recurring theme, it seems, that the drop rate and the purchase rate of the boxes always keeps changing. And I feel like there's always a miss with this, because if they just kept the consistent... I think last year was a good rate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but last year the exchange rates were not too bad. Enko, you probably have the best knowledge on this because you gamble every year.
I broke even last year. So, which was
that's
a little
a win.
bit of a surprise. Yeah, I broke even last year, and then after waiting like 4 or 5 months to like cash in on some other things, I probably made like 10k gold total off of it. But yeah, the big problem with this year is they doubled the material prices, but it doesn't look like they changed the drop rates beyond adding the music box infusion. So if you open the same number of boxes, because the price went up and the drop rate stayed the same, you were basically looking at a 50% loss right away, which is unfortunate.
You know, I kind of have an issue with they have this 1-year event, and this is probably it's not a good sign that this is our biggest sink actually for the whole year, because we have nothing from EOD last year all the way till this year. We actually did have 4 wins right after End of Dragon's release a few months later. However, I feel like they released it at the wrong timing last year, because right after they released it, it was in line with the Steam release. And so you had all these new players coming into the game and getting all these materials, and they're looking at all of this, you know, wow, this is so expensive, I could sell this and make money. And then literally as soon as 4 wins ends, 2 weeks later, everything goes back down in price. And we haven't had anything that could keep it on an upward trajectory or somewhat accommodate such changes. So everything's just been going on a downward sort of trend. It's been going like that for months. Expansions are, you know, the only exceptions where, you know, things can go up. Granted, there's a few instances in an update where something specific does go up and not. And this is even a little bit tying into later's discussion about the expansion itself. However, I felt like they could have honestly if they just kept the same drop rate, same exchange rate that they had from last year, we probably would have had a bit more, I think, of a positive outlook for this one this year. So yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a loss on that.
Yeah,
think
the part of the problem. Oh, go ahead.
I think one of the trends that they did with End of Dragons was kind of clear that rather than trying to sync old materials, they just invented new ones and made them more important. And that's been a trend that honestly we could possibly expect with the new expansion as well.
Well, they didn't really sync any new ones. Like the main changes with the prices, besides doubling them, the only major thing that happened was they uncapped research notes. So research notes last year were part of Four Winds, but you had a weekly cap of like it was very small. Like it wasn't even worth considering. But this year they completely removed the cap. So once you get to 12 research notes, it's unlimited how many boxes you can buy with them. So if you go off of like Fast Farming's website right now, um, their cheapest research nodes is, if we ignore the TP ones because those can go pretty fast, is 95 coppers through crafting. Um, and the thing is, if you look at that though, that's not depleting any new resources. That's using the existing materials, and it's just uh, making people craft for them instead. Now it is kind of a thing for like the intermediate crafting materials like dust and the lodestones and stuff like that. The problem is that like for the player base, that's a lot of extra work. So it was a lot easier to just go to a vendor and like, hey, here, take 20,000 mithril and get boxes back. Versus, okay, hey, if you go through this big process of crafting stuff, breaking down the research notes, then you could get a box for cheaper. It's like the cheapest boxes right now, if using research notes, is 95 copper from available from just like crafting is 95 copper per research note, which makes each box 11 silver, 40 copper. So, but not a lot of people are going to like spend the time to like figure out how much does this thing cost for research notes, how much does it make each box cost. Okay, this is a good deal, let's trade for it. So it'll work, but you're going to have a very small amount of materials consumed that way, relative to just turning in straight up materials. It's too much work, in other words.
Yeah, this is I mean, crafting is its own issue in the other sense, but funny enough, with Four Winds, they have the right formula of just just exchange this for this, and this is what you get. I wish they would use that more than, like Abree, you mentioned, they introduce a lot of new materials, which then now you've added another sort of thing that you have to make some sort of usefulness for. And if they just find these Four Winds formula of just here's some materials, give me some boxes, that same formula you just apply it everywhere else in the game. I think that works out well. And then going back to your thing on the research notes, like, is the cheapest option. However, yeah, the effort is not there for people to go through it and then just to save in a little bit more, which I don't know how the Reddit has, or anyone else in the general sense has looked into it. It would certainly be interesting to see if anyone has posted on the research notes on any other big public. I mean, Reddit is the biggest public platform we have in terms of discussion. I'd honestly want to see what was the opinions of those, from who you guys spoke to as well. Because for me, it was all like too much effort. I don't want to do that. However, I have these ectos. I'm gonna spend them, even though they could get like an extra few boxes. The effort is just not worth it. So on your end, do you guys find that this is kind of the similar sentiment, basically? No.
I think the sentiment that I've gotten from just people around me is one of three things. It's either it's not gambling if you're collecting data. I think Enko falls into that category. And then there's been people who are going to gamble anyways, who have the materials, or if they don't, they have the gold. They're just going to insta buy them off the trading post. They're just going to gamble. They are living out a gambling problem through Four Winds. And then you have people who just ignore it altogether. And I think people fall into one of those three categories. And I think the general player base is going to fall into one of the two latter ones, where it's either I'm going to spend the gold I have or the materials I have, I'm going to gamble, even though it's probably not worth it, whatever, I'm going to gamble just because I might get something. They don't care about the math. They don't care if it's worth it. They're just going to do it because it's easy and because it amuses them for a short time. And then you have people who are just going to ignore it entirely.
Well, in a sense, yeah. Sorry, you want to say something, Enko?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, the people who are actually going to try to, make a profit or really care about it, you would have started saving up materials like months and months ago. Like, the only way, like, Teapot likes to call Four Winds like a scam festival. It's not a scam if like you start prepping early enough, like where the boxes are cheap enough, which would have been okay this year, but they doubled the prices, right? So yeah, most people turn in whatever materials they have to do it, but they're not going to go out of their way to like go buy stuff. You also are going to have the people like when the festival launches, like they're going to act like it's like Four Winds was like a huge surprise, like, oh, look at these new vendors, let's go buy Mithril and Silk off the trading post, and then they're buying it for the inflated prices because it's they act like this doesn't happen every year, or they're new players. Like newer players might be looking at this and like, oh, and then let's try this, and they don't recognize that the boxes are really low chances to drop the good stuff. But yeah, I think the big problem with this year, like if people are comparing it to last year, the big turnoff this year is that the prices are so much higher. It's literally they double the prices completely. So I think a lot of people who might have saved gold to buy stuff, or might have saved materials, might have saw that and go like, I'm just going to sell my stuff instead. But yeah, it's not looking good.
Surprisingly, like I have to agree with this idea that people every single year, this event comes up and then it's like, oh my god, I didn't save up, and it's like it's around sometime June, July, August. I mean, at least from how the event gets presented every year. And I made a video on this recently, how to prepare for Festival of the Four Winds, or how to make gold in Festival of the Four Winds, which I released in the same week that the release dropped. Of course, the point of the video for me at least wasn't that like, oh, like this thing happened and you're kind of late. It's kind of like a video that I hope to just every single year remind people 3 months in advance, prepare or something. However, I understand that for not many players will be able to be like, okay, yeah, let me store up all these materials that I have 4 or 5 months, however long they want to prep for it, before the event ever gets announced or any of that. I understand not everyone has the money or has the gold capacity to just have all these materials lying around. So the proper terms I used in the video was like the materials that you might not need 3 months later and you don't mind making a profit on, and you can just sit on them for a bit, and maybe have some materials you do want to use for the current situation. Maybe you want to make something out of them, like a legendary armor. So it's always using those terms of like, save what you don't need. And because for the most part, let's be honest, only the people who have a couple thousand gold to spare are going to be buying these materials or finding ways to get these materials 3-4 months beforehand, versus players who maybe just have like, hey, I have an extra 2 stacks of this material, I'm just going to store that, and I'm going to need the ones that I need. So I feel like that's where also maybe some players just don't feel like the difference will make any much of a gain for them, right? Like it's 2-3 stacks. What am I going to do with that? I might as well just gamble. And I feel like that maybe can play a bit into their decision making.
Well, so I guess we do need to talk about that. So like they did have a position for an economy manager put up last year. That position didn't get filled as far as we know. And then I think you're the one that told me is that they assigned that responsibility to an existing employee somewhere. So it wasn't somebody that was like, hey, I'm an economics guy, let me do this job. It was more like, hey, someone who already works for us, you're gonna be in charge of this. I don't know what team that's on, but I would assume it's not part of the rewards team. But I don't know who that guy is. I don't know who to like what their expertise or knowledge on this is. But I think they thought that if they doubled the prices, like they probably were thinking like, hey, well, if it like, I guess we have to get like, what's the point of 4 Winds for ANET? If it's to get rid of the glut of materials on here, maybe they were thinking, oh, if we double the prices, this will get rid of double the materials. The problem is if you double the prices, you will have like, that's assuming you'll have exactly half the number of boxes opened as previous years to get the same number of materials drained from the economy. The problem is that with the price has doubled, you're probably going to lose a lot of people from opening these things. So you're going to have less than half, which means we're going to consume less. But we also have like 7 times the amount of materials that we did on the training post this year compared to last year. So they honestly, what they should have done was cut the prices even more from last year. Like cut them from half from last year. So the more people would gamble. They threw in the music box, so that would have drove more people to do it. And then because the box would be so cheap, a lot of people would have been buying off the trading post, even with the prices going up on the materials themselves. That probably would have consumed a lot more, but we honestly just need permanent sinks. So yeah,
it's a band-aid fix, right? Like it comes up once a year, it solves something for like a month, but it's not enough, right? That 1 month doesn't make up for the other 11, and that's the thing here with all of this. I think, yeah, in a sense, if they just kept the price a bit more lower, like, yeah, I think it'd lead to more purchases. Sure, it might mean, let's say that with the drop rates, it might mean maybe more infusions coming out into the market or whatever, but I don't think that is a big problem. I think a bit more infusions for the fact that we get more of these materials off is probably a better net gain than most people think it is.
Yeah, like there's more interaction with the player base with Mithril, Silk, Leather, and Elderwood than there are with infusions. So those are going to affect the player base a lot more than the price of infusions going down.
The other thing is people who already have those infusions are not really keeping them to make a profit. And if you get more of them, that's going to lower the price point and make them more accessible to people who just find them ridiculous at this point. 5,000 gold for a cosmetic item, that's unachievable or ridiculous, not worth my time. If you bring that down to 1,000 gold for one of those because you bring in a bunch, then it increases accessibility. My biggest issue with 4 Winds is you are taking tradable items that we have a lot of, and then you get some tradable items that we have a lot of back, and then you get some tradable items that we don't have much of back. The thing that I think would really potentially drive people who are in the middle, who don't really interact with the festival at all, would be something that is account bound, where you can fast track something that you normally wouldn't be able to fast track by syncing materials during the festival. And I don't know what that would be, but it gives people a reason to not really gamble. But if it's something in the uncommon tier that you can reasonably expect, you're going to get a decent amount of this account bound thing by syncing a bunch of materials. I think that would drive more people who are going after that thing or want to fast track whatever that is to go for it. And we don't really have anything like that.
Well, one of the suggestions that I had thought about when I was dealing with all this stuff is like, I actually think that they should take all the materials that come out of the Zephyrite boxes and be able to trade those back in for more boxes too. So this is especially a problem with quartz crystals, because quartz crystals, you're guaranteed 1 out of every box in addition to everything else, which just means we get a ton of quartz crystals. If you look at the price of quartz crystals, it's down to 60 copper. Like, what if you can turn in like 20 quartz crystals for a box or something like that, or 10 quartz crystals, or however many? So that way, that supply just doesn't go huge with like very little demand. But as far as your suggestion about like having it be used for something for the festival, so I guess the festival vendors with the skins, you can trade for festival tokens for things like the weapon skins, spirit shards, like the mini pets, all that kind of stuff. What if we had you can trade materials directly for festival tokens, which you could then trade for the 4 Winds items, I guess, which would help with some of the achievements, I guess.
I mean, even that, just to add to that, you can even, if you're going to do like a route like that, then you can make it what you're trading with anyways is going to be account bound. So you do kind of solve the problem of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess mine would be a little more roundabout about trying to like feed other systems. Abree, I guess you're looking for something like a direct thing that would progress, like an achievement or progress towards getting a new skin or something like that.
even just like a skin or an infusion that is ordinarily account bound, or even like a wallet currency that is particularly difficult or time gated to obtain. It like even something like, I don't know, if you could get a box that would let you pick like 5 of a certain currency that's difficult or time gated to get, like skirmish tickets. If you could fast track skirmish tickets by doing boxes, there's a chance that someone who wants those skirmish tickets is willing to not gamble for infusions, but pay several hundred gold because they expect to get a decent amount of skirmish tickets that speed it up. And there's multiple systems that are similar to that you could put in there. I don't know what all those would be, but I'm looking for more of a hard stop of, you get something out of this that's valuable to you, but is not able to be put on the trading post again.
So the weekly vendors that they do at the festival, like the festival weekly vendors, where you can get transmutation charges, exchange vouchers, like the winter berries, that kind of stuff. So you can exchange festival tokens for that right now. Like, your suggestion would be like adding skirmish tickets to that, adding the PvP ascended tokens to that, and then maybe removing the limit, so you're not limited to just like 3 exchange vouchers a week. Actually, I think it's 2. I don't even know how many that is. Like adding Mystic Clovers of that, and then being able to use your festival tokens to get that stuff. But we added skirmish and remove the limit. So then you could gamble for the boxes, get festival tokens, and then exchange directly for that stuff. Like, is that what you're talking about?
Either that, or add them directly to the box if it's an item that you want to give, that you would put into like a rare tier that might be something that's normally account bound.
I would see like
But,
they do it
yeah.
directly to the box, right? Because I don't think, you know, for us
Makes it more
this sounds
visible.
like a more easier idea. Like, yeah, if you link this to this, but I think simplicity probably is the best route to go with this. Because anyways, as it goes, it's already a lot of difficulty for some players to keep up with how they use these kind of systems, especially for something that's a 1 month only festival, right? It just happens once a year. So I think directly into the box, it'd probably be the better solution, just to remove any confusion or headache of the problem. But I do like the idea that, yeah, if you created more of these account bound items, it could be even materials that I don't know if they want to even do time gated materials, but for the month, I think it wouldn't be that bad if they had that included. Because yeah, you're gambling and then you're getting these sort of drops that are kind of still feeding more materials into the economy. So I'm sure they have the statistics on how much the ratio of going in versus out is, but it feels like you would at least rather have others in place than actual existing materials you're feeding into these boxes.
Yeah, so on the Google sheet that I had the drop rates on, I added the categories on there, and then like the drop rates drops per boxes. So when you're talking about adding like an account bound thing to like the rare category, I mean, so it looks like the rare category, it's around a 0.05% chance. You get one every about 2,500 boxes, looks like. So do you think having a skirmish ticket for 2,500 boxes would be worth it to people, or do you think that maybe it should be put in the uncommon tier? Because the uncommon tier, you're getting one about every 1,000, looks like. Maybe
I think
750.
rare would be something like an account bound infusion that you would value, sub 100 gold, but still something more substantial. I think for things like currencies and stuff like that, you would want to put it in one of the lower tiers. The other option, I guess, is you could put something that translates, like it's something from the gem store that you would be able to get through boxes, but very slowly. Like maybe a statuette you put in the rare tier, something like that. Something that, or you redo what they did with the achievements where they gave out 20 statuettes, and you link that to people gambling on boxes, and you open so many boxes, you get statuettes periodically. It's community wide, so everyone's incentivized to open boxes rather than just some people. And I think that doesn't hold too much risk to their bottom line by disincentivizing the gem store, but I think it gives people a reason to open boxes. I think that's really the way that you make 4 Winds work, is you give everyone, or you give a lot more people, reasons to open the boxes, because that's really what's lacking, is you have a small number of people opening the majority of the boxes right now.
Well,
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that the drops from the Zephyr boxes hasn't really changed much. So it's the same materials that just are getting pumped into the economy and nothing new. Like we got the music box infusion this year. That's new. They added the Everbloom and the Dragon Void last year. But it's like other than that, the stuff that most people are going to get, it's the same stuff. Like the Zephyrite gloves are the same skins that we had since like the first year this got introduced. The antitoxin skins, like those are the same thing. So if they added, maybe they should have cycled the gloves or the skins. Like instead of having the lightning, wind, and sun touch Zephyrite gloves, maybe they should have added some new skins too, so that you had other reasons to open these things besides that. But I do like your suggestion where it's like, yeah, like a global achievement like they had with the mithril donations. Was that a couple years ago now?
Oh, it's been a while.
It was supposed
maybe
to unlock,
6
like,
to 9 months ago, somewhere in there, I think, because it was post EOD, right?
I don't think it was. I don't remember when it was, but I would like if they did stuff like that more often. But yeah, having like a global counter for Zephyrite boxes opened that would reward achievement or give stuff to everybody that opened at least a stack or something like that. And you could have different tiers for it. That would be kind of cool.
I think
because then individually people are paying however much a stack costs to open on average. That's how much they're paying, and they're getting all these rewards. But as a collective, it sinks a lot of materials if everyone opened a stack that actively plays.
I mean, something like that would be cool, because then you have this sort of, well, okay, you're combining this gambling aspect of this event, but then you've now included a overall contribution from the entire game. And honestly, stuff like that, I love it when they add these kind of, donation goals that you have to do, and then sometimes they even tie it in for something like a charity. They've done this, I think, with Extra Life a few times. I think every year they do something with Extra Life in a sense like that. And I think if they do it with this, it's again adding another incentive. And then honestly, I think if they drop honestly, the drop rate to me is where it comes down to. I think if they just dropped it a bit more to a more reasonable frame where not everyone, but more people are winning. Like I don't see any bad thing coming down to this. I think it's a bigger net gain for them to just give more infusions if it means more materials get consumed. Because yeah, I mean, we all remember 5-6 years ago, these infusions were at a very astronomical level of prices, right? They're never going to be like that, hopefully, in the future. But I'm sure 5-6 years ago, I mean, that could have also been a driving point for people of trying to get an infusion, because it was like a lottery ticket. You win a chalk, you got like, at the time was like 23k gold in your hands if you knew that you could sell it off the trading post. If not, then you just got your 8.5k after tax on trading post. However, now that even we've seen it go down to the price that it's more, in reasonable terms. I mean, still not for a lot of people, but within that 0 to 10k budget, people are still very much interested in these infusions. So I think even if more people were winning, I wouldn't see it being offset, because there's still quite a lot of players who've never even come across one of these infusions.
I don't think it should be that big of a problem for the game if like chalks and Everblooms and stuff like that were a little more available to people. Because I mean, you can farm that stuff in the game. Like the Everbloom is from EOD strikes, seeing the Dragon Void, I think. Like if they added the OLC infusion to this and the World vs. World infusion, like making rare drops too. I also think that if they really were worried about infusion prices, which I don't think they are, but I would love to see it if they added infusions in the armory, for example. So if you get a chalk infusion, you can use it on all your characters instead of just one. But yeah, I would like to see some stuff like that. That stuff might drive more people to do this. But all of this is just addressing a symptom of there's too many materials on the market, and that's due to Enid's own actions. Like Yala Delve, with the amount of UNIDs that got generated from that, with people processing UNIDs inefficiently, which is salvaging them, it produced a lot of materials. Like if you look at the BLTC charts and you look at when the supply of the T5 mats like started to skyrocket, it looks like it was because of Gala Delve. So if ANET saw that and as a response, they needed to do something to drive people to consume those materials with 4 wins, because this is like the main event to do it, or introduce another event like the Mystic Forge donations, to get rid of some of that stuff. They kind of need to do that. Otherwise, the cheaper items on the economy are just going to become like vendor price again, which is, we did see that earlier on in the game, and they had to take some really drastic changes to try to fix that stuff. So it's kind of, I don't know. That's why I'm questioning like whoever's in charge of this now. It's just like, I don't know. I would like to know what their mindset is, or like what their goal is at this point.
Well, that kind of, and I feel like this kind of brings us to a little bit about Secrets of the Obscure, in a sense, because that's where we're heading in less than a month. And yeah, 4 wins is good. It's just that there needs to be more of that, right? And that's been the issue. Is even with Abree, you touched on this briefly, right? Like they always add new currencies or new materials, and I understand they have to put that in for the sake of, it's a new expansion, or if it's a new map, or if it's a new update, they want to add something else that is solely maybe exclusive to that area or is contributing in a way. However, I don't see why you can't just use the old systems. I mean, you can still do that. We're literally at a level now where currencies in themselves are like, you need a whole lesson just on understanding the currencies of the game. And that's not good, to be honest. It's not good that you have to have so many explanations on where you're supposed to exchange what, that you can even exchange this currency into this, and then from there you can go buy something else. And it's getting to that point where new players are just not going to have fun with this stuff. And because the game doesn't have any other sense of reward system in terms of vertical progression, you're always baseline on that legendary stuff and everything. And because the game doesn't reward gold, the raw gold itself, in any format, very rarely, it's very little and very sprinkles, it creates this underlying problem where they always have to find a way to get these materials sunk in somewhere. In fact, funny enough, the other expansions, or the other, MMOs, like WoW and Final Fantasy, I feel like it might be even a positive on why the other MMOs, their economies are so trash, but their players are able to get rewards better because the economies are so trash.
Well, the reward systems in those games are a bit different. Like, of all the MMOs, Guild Wars 2's like normal like gold economy is probably the most healthy of all of them. Like World of Warcraft, your drops, your rewards from gameplay anyways, it's from doing like from doing raids and like getting those better weapon drops, because there's that gear treadmill. Final Fantasy 14, similar thing, right? But so you get your rewards from getting better and better gear. Like, since we don't have that, like as most people say, like cosmetics is kind of the end game in this, like fashion wars. So if that's how the community sees it, and ANET's okay with that, then they kind of need to drive into that. And it's like, okay, if cosmetics are the end game, like legendaries are the end game, skins are the end game, then tie in what Abree was saying with this is like, give us ways to get that stuff through these boxes. Like, they should do the same thing with trick or treat bags. They should do the same thing with Winter's Day gifts. They should do the same thing like the Lunar New Year envelopes, the Dragon Bash things. They should do this for festivals where it's like you can contribute to that stuff and it's over time. Like, have an achievement where it's like you open a certain number of festival bags for any festival and you unlock something. Or it contributes, like, and then it's repeatable for different skins or something like that. But yeah, they do kind of need to refresh that a little bit. But if their idea is that cosmetics is the end game because we don't want to have vertical progression through gear stats, then they actually do need to play into that a little bit if they want to avoid the economy kind of just crashing eventually.
Yeah. I actually want to add into that. I mean, I think I also don't want to see this get to the point where they have to then keep finding ways to create, I mean, hey, it might be benefit in terms of reward, but new legendary skins, because at the end of the day, that seems to be the max tier we're ever going to get in terms of a high end item. And they can create different legendary armors and weapons with different requirements. They can even go a little bit out of like the regular standard T6s, or even create the T6s. And then, however, this is actually a worry about what I have with the new one, the open world legendary armor. I'm very worried that it's going to be so easy to get, similar to the Ori Generation 3 legendaries. Like and I know I say that, yeah, 1,000 gold is not that much. I understand a lot of other players, maybe that isn't in the grand scheme of things, but in general, you're 5-6 months out of the expansion in EOD, and you already saw just how everything has just been going down in price, right? And for a player who's like, well, it doesn't matter, I farm my materials. Well, yeah, but your materials now are worth less. So now the time to whatever you used to farm in, let's say you were making 30 gold per hour farming a map. Now 30 gold per hour now is 20 gold per hour. It is going to affect it, because eventually when you want to sell whatever supply that you have that is like an excess, you're not getting what you used to get. And so these high requirements for these very prestigious items are sort of needed to even get, at least establish a baseline where your time farming the game or playing or finding other ways of enjoying the game and at least being rewarded for it, they would make sense in the gold per hour scheme of things.
Well, so people have brought up when I talk about that, it's like, well, why are low prices bad? And part of it is because what you brought up is like, oh, well, you go farm a map for an hour, you get 30 gold. Material prices, but everything, when we say 30 gold an hour, we're not talking about raw gold, we're talking about materials, which you have to sell. Okay, the prices go down, now you're only making 20 gold an hour. And perception-wise, that feels bad, right? You get to the point where like, why am I spending an hour to only make 20 gold? And on the flip side of it, people are like, well, but any gold I do get, the stuff I do want to buy is cheaper. So if you're someone that's making raw gold, like if you do fractals every day, it's great, because that's generally gives you a flat out 50 gold a day in raw gold, not materials. So then any materials you buy is cheap. Okay, but in the big picture of things, like materials being low, like if we eventually get back to the point where like silk and leather are just like you sell to the vendor, because it did get to that point where it was a 7 copper on the trading post for a while. As a whole, it's not healthy for the economy. And as I said, perception-wise, it just feels bad to go farming and you only make 20 gold an hour. And it makes people feel like their time isn't being used well. So, but that's basically only on the T5 maps, because when you go farm maps, you get on IDs, you get stuff, you salvage it, you get T5 materials. It doesn't touch upon everything like T1 through T4 materials, because those don't drop as often. Are actually in kind of a healthier place than T5 maps, because a lot of people don't farm those areas as much. So how does ANET fix that? How does ANET make it feel like it's worth your time to go farming, instead of everybody just goes like, oh, what's the best farming place to make gold, and then everybody just zergs that map? They got an interesting issue with this, where it's like they need to have an aim for this. And it probably wouldn't feel as bad if they were doing periodic events to drain materials. So that way, when you do go farm, you get a lot of mithril. It doesn't feel as bad. Like if they did the Mystic Forge donation events more often, and mithril was 60 copper instead, and you go farming, now you're getting 50 gold an hour. It feels better. It just feels better too. Like you as a player, you feel like you did more. People like seeing high numbers.
Yeah. The thing that I've told people before when they've asked that, because I put out a whole video about it, and everyone, like, well, not everyone, a lot of people's reaction was what you were saying. Well, what I'm buying is cheaper, so what's the problem? And and then the thing that I say to them is, like, how much do you like having Eyes of Cormyr and congealed putrescences clogging up your inventory? How much do you like Mystic Slivers? Like when your material storage gets full of them, you do a daily and you get one. How much do you like having to delete that every single time, or go to your material storage and clear it out? Not very much. Now imagine like half the materials in the game were like that. How much fun would that be? Because we have a lot of materials, and we have a decent number of them that are nearly worthless. And if we increase the number that are worthless or nearly worthless to such a large number, it would not feel good for anyone. And the whole idea of inventory wars would get even more depressing because you're clearing out your inventory and then you're also not getting anything out of it. Normally when you clear out your inventory, you get some sort of gold or, like you get something out of doing that. But if you end up with 50 silver from clearing your whole inventory, that doesn't feel good at all. And the other thing is, because I know a lot of what people uh, will get from this is, okay, these are people who have processed unidentified gear and used the crafting system and abused the trading post and that to make money, and all they care about is making money. So that's where this is coming from. They want to make money. It's better if things are more expensive. That's not always the case. There's a lot of cases where when things hit vendor value, when things are low, there's a lot of cases where things are abusable, where you can actually just print gold because things have reached vendor value. And a lot of people
Blue
don't
on IDs.
understand that. Like people don't all understand that that's the case. So like lower prices doesn't necessarily mean that, everyone's making more money who already has money. A lot of the times it's better if things are lower, but then, having money in a dead game is not very fun. And when your economy spirals out of control like that, you end up with a dead game sooner or later. So like that's why it's important.
I think a part of that is like, it's human psychology. You want to see that gold go up, and Guild Wars 2 doesn't really do much because you're getting rewarded in the item drops in the game, and you have that extra step where you have to then find out whether you craft them into something, whether you just sell them directly to trading posts, or if it's just junk items you sell to the vendor. But we humans, we're simple. We like to see numbers go up, right? And yeah, when you clean out that inventory and you're only getting that 50 silver for that like 10 minutes of work. Well, I don't know that because my inventory is always a mess, but but for most people, yeah, I think it is a bit of it gets to that level where you don't feel like your content is meaningful, right? And that's not really, we've seen so many instances of that. For example, I mean, right now after EOD, and for a longest time, I used to use this example, Living World Season 4. I think Abree's even tired of maybe me mentioning this. I would, back then, I would insist Living World Season 4 was one of the most engaging, fun, and consistent farms you could do because there's abundance of maps to get into. So there's so many events. It's, each commander kind of tackles those Living World Season 4 maps to the events that they like. And yeah, it's an engaging meta. You can jump out of the train anytime you want. You're getting volatile magic. You're getting a certain decent amount of spirit shards, even more. But after, EOD, because naturally everything was, going down. There was not many sinks in that expansion. Ectos were brutalized because of that expansion. T6 mats, T5 mats, everything going down on the board. Now, nobody even wants to run LS4 because that whole meta is dead. Like 4 or 5 maps of those, they're not really, gaining you anything, right? And I think only recently people have been going back to them for the most part, only because like they're being mixed with now other maps from other expansions and stuff like that. So it can affect playtime as well. It is not just a standard of, yeah, well, rich want to be rich. Yeah, that's the case. Rich do want to be rich. However, it's also the game time that you log in, because I doubt everyone is doing T4s and CMs every single day. And people usually hate when I bring up T4s and CMs, but yeah, that is one of the best money makers you can make if you don't want to touch any spreadsheets, you don't want to do any of your flipping or any of that stuff, right? Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah, going back to what Abree was saying about like, hey, it's when certain things go down to vendor value, you can make a lot of gold. I said blue on IDs at that point. So yeah, guys, blue on IDs vendor value is 82 copper. When blue on IDs were at vendor value, like you can put in buy orders for like 300,000 or 400,000 and get them pretty quickly. And if you process them correctly, it was a 40% profit. Like you would put in 1,000 gold, and you would get 1,000 gold back, plus materials, plus rares, plus exotics and actives. So you were making 400 gold for every 1,000 gold you were putting in, and it was the fastest processing on ID for a while. And that's what happens when things go to vendor value. Well, the problem is that most things are better. Like when I say vendor value, like I'm talking about the price that you could sell to a vendor. And with how low prices are for materials right now, it's actually better to vendor like a lot of fine gear and masterwork gear if you have an extractor with a masterwork gear, anyways. Just because you get more out of it than you do the materials. Most people don't realize that though, which is why the amount of materials keeps going up. Like if people were actually just vendoring their fine gear, and if they had extractors and they were extracting their masterworks and vendoring their masterwork gear, we actually probably wouldn't have as many T5 masks on the market as we do. So people get mad at people that are making a lot of gold. Like there's a lot of hate out there for people that make a lot of gold. And one, there's nothing stopping anybody else from doing that. You just have to spend some time in doing that, on effort and trying to figure that stuff out. But it also, it just because if you know the drop rates, you know how to kind of, I don't want to say abuse it, but you know how to take advantage of it. And a lot of people just don't do that. And as also going back to what Abree was saying about, it's like when you clear out your inventory, it just feels bad. Like you clear out your entire inventory, you end up with a net 50 silver. Something you're also forgetting about this. So how do you guys clear out your inventories? You guys sell stuff on the trading post, right? The trading post is not fun to use. Like if you're trying to clear out your bank, you're trying to clear out your material storage, and you're listing all your things. If you're listing things, like you have everything lined up and you're listing things, you get timed out after 16 stacks. You can list 4K mithril, for instance, before it says you've been listing items for too fast. This does lead people to just not like. It's annoying to use the trading post. Like it's also slow. It lags out. So when people are forced to use that to try to convert their materials to gold, it just feels bad. And that's actually why a lot of people don't do the trading post, because it's annoying. So I don't know if they fix the trading post a bit too, made it easier. Like, hey, let us list more than 250 of an item at a time, right? Like, oh, I had 500 mithril. Let me just list 500 mithril at one time instead of having to sell twice. Right? If they made the trading post easier to use for people, more people might participate in it, which also would help as a gold sink because of like the TP tax fees. But people wouldn't be as annoyed to try to clear out the banks. And if prices were better, you would also feel like you're getting more out of it. I don't know. There's some work that they could do on this stuff. It's just that, again, I don't know what the economy manager is doing, because he doesn't seem to be doing much.
Well, I think also a part of this, I feel like, has to stem from the fact that we're at the level now where most of the money making, I would say, secrets are sort of out, right? Well, hey, Secrets of the Obscure coming out August 22, but most of the money making secrets, I feel like, are kind of gone. And to an extent, this is maybe because a lot of the big traders in the game, a lot of people who even discovered a lot of these things before anyone else, were become so public about it, right? I mean, we even had 2 discords about it. There used to be an older economy discord where things were slowly being shared there, and then since overflow, everybody knows the methods, right? However, how do you do the method? That's usually up to people to figure out, and then even just figure out which method at which time of the month or week, or however the updates are handling things. And it goes to that, right? I think, like you said, Enko, there are people who are trying out those methods. However, maybe they're not actually doing it the right way, or they assume it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's it. It's not like, oh no, the steps actually change. Sometimes it's not, steps 1 through 9. It's steps 1 through 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have to mix them up a little bit. So. And that kind of does contribute a little bit. I don't know how much, but it does contribute a little bit. And we get a lot of these in overflow, where people actually ask these questions, and it's nothing to them. They're still trying to figure it out. But it's a lot of that, oh, I thought this is always the way, right? And I'm talking about units here, because there are plenty of different processes you need to do with units. Same one that kind of applies is that you might salvage, but after you extract. However, everything that you're left over with, the whole material that you're or items that you're left with after you even went through a lot of those bags, that is 10 different ways you can make money on those, and depending on where the economy is. So I think part of that is the fact that while there's more methods out there, people just don't really seem to understand how to apply those methods, and that also contributes in a different way.
Or they don't want to do them.
Or
That's
they
the
don't
other
do
thing.
them, yeah. You get this a lot actually in your videos, because Abree, you've been releasing now for a few months now, a few videos, right? And I've seen a couple of the comments, and it always comes from a very, I feel like for most of them, it's a very honest question, right? But it's still a little bit scary to see that there are people who even try these methods, and then it's only because someone told them this was the way, and they just go about it.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of I've been lucky to not have so many nasty comments later on, but a lot of honest people where it's just like, I don't want to do this, or this works fine enough for me, and that's the general attitude of the community at this point. But definitely what you're saying about like a lot of the big stuff being out in the open is absolutely true. I remember I was running a train. I don't remember why. I was doing it. It was fun. It was back when we were on voice chat. I remember mentioning, someone was asking, what do they do with the green gear, the masterwork gear that they get from Fractals, which doesn't have any upgrades in it. And just my suggesting that one of the potential options for them was vendoring it got me like 3 or 4 passive aggressive DMs from people saying, stop talking about this. Like that was how secretive it was at one point, that people didn't want me to even mention the fact that vendoring those was a possibility, or like the extractor, people were threatened at one point with being kicked out of Overflow in the early days for just mentioning the extractor. And it was just like, it's so crazy to think back, because now people just talk about it in general chat.
The funny thing is that
funny.
the funny thing is me and Enko in 2020 are out in public talking about this on Tea Time with Teapot, and the reason why we're so open about it is that nobody wants to do it. Like, nobody's gonna put the effort for any of that stuff.
So Abree, did you know that there is a GW2? There's an Overflow staff member, I guess.
Hey.
Use, that is charging money for this stuff, for this information.
Wait,
like,
what? There's no staff member charging money for this.
Yes, there is. You have to pay into his Patreon to get these secret tips of how to do un-IDs, of like all these gold making things, like the thing that I was talking about, like control symbols being, you can use pain enhancement symbols for it. You have to pay into his Patreon for him to tell you this stuff on his Discord. And it's just like, hey guys,
wait, I know this person.
Anybody else?
I know this
people
person.
Are telling you this for free.
I don't. He's not a staff member though.
His profile description says otherwise.
That's not a staff member. No, I know who it is. He's never been a staff member.
He's a founder at least.
It's like a complimentary title, but they're not a. They've never been. They've never been involved in Overflow in any way besides like they were one of the first founders in the Discord. That's it.
Well, he's advertising him as an Overflow person, which is how he's getting people to like subscribe to him. it's pretty funny.
I actually have to look into. Like, I have to look into that because I know that he advertises it as his own personal stuff, but not as an Overflow. I actually have to look at it. If it's an Overflow, I actually have to stop him now, or at least remove the Overflow. Yeah. But yeah, no. I know what it is. He's not. He's never been like in any capacity an admin or staff member. It's just the title for him.
There's people advertising that they will give you secret gold making secrets if you pay real money, and it's just like, hey guys, if you take that real money, you'll probably be able to get more gold just converting your money into gems and then trading for gold, because all these methods take time. Like if you do un-IDs, like the only way you make a lot of gold doing un-IDs is by processing a lot of un-IDs. Like it's not a get rich quick scheme. I don't think people realize that, like right now, optimal profit from a single green UNID gear is 3 silver and 2 or actually that's revenue. 3 silver and 2 coppers are revenue. So you're only at current TP prices, you're making 60 copper per UNID green. So how do you make 2,000 gold a day doing that? You have to do a lot of UNIDs, and a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. So there are a lot of ways to make gold in the game. It's just that all the easy ones, they don't make a lot of gold anymore. Like all the ones that are really really easy to make gold, like it's just like hit this button and make gold. Those are all at like 1%, 2% profits. You're barely making anything. Everything that actually makes good a decent amount of gold nowadays, it takes work, and just people don't want to do it.
I think this also becomes an issue with wait, I think I'm lagging a little bit. No, I'm okay. I think this kind of issue also drove a lot of the fact of, and this is maybe because it's in a lot of other MMOs, it kind of does sometimes come to the simple of get this item, sell this item, make money, right? Whereas in Guild Wars 2, there's, I mean, yeah, the economy, honestly, it's probably the best MMO economy you'll ever see. I don't know, maybe something tops this. And of course, that does lead into the situations we are now, where your 1,000 gold still feels kind of a lot of gold, right? Like 1,000 gold in a lot of other MMOs is like your 10 gold in Guild Wars 2, not even, maybe 1 gold.
200 gold is still considered a lot in this game.
Yeah, 200 gold, even 100 gold. Getting 100 gold in map chat is like, people still see it as like, wow, I got 100 gold. That's a lot of gold. I can put that into something now. That funds maybe a bit of their precursor or legendary making or whatever it is. And I think this is where, and there was an era of this, this is even before my time as, and even I think all of our times as content creators officially, where a lot of videos on YouTube, and I'm not going to say any names, but you probably already know where I'm going with this, is that it was a very simple, here's how you can get rich, buy this, sell this. And then the item just tanks after the video's out for 10 minutes. And there were too many of those. And I think people even became very skeptical when actual traders came out and then were saying, explaining their videos where it was, here's the method, and then this is the reasoning behind the method. But then you're not actually giving what is the item or what is like the secret behind where you make the money, right? You're just showing them like there are these ways that you can make the money, and then there's certain steps. And that honestly created a lot of skepticism. People were like, "Oh, you're not explaining how to make money. You're just creating a bunch of whatever, right?" And it takes a lot to educate, right? But it took quite the years to even get to the level that we are now, and people are still skeptical. So I feel like it's and honestly, yeah, I honestly, for a new player, I agree. Guild Wars 2 as a way to get what you need, it sucks. Like, you actually have to figure things out way more than other MMOs. There's a lot more effort to get things.
When you say get what you need, what do you mean by get what you need? Because getting geared and full ascended in this game is actually pretty easy now. When you were talking about that, are you talking about like getting enough materials and resources to make legendaries and get like high value items?
Is, for me, a need is things that will improve your quality of life gameplay in the game, that you will enjoy as well, right? So for me, legendary armor or ascended, if that's your stopping point, legendary weapons, QOL items like the copper fed, things like those to me are needs. Wants to me are like, yeah, I want that black lion skin, but I don't need that black lion skin, right? I want that dye, but I don't need that dye right now. I could do the fashion wars later. To me, I think the needs are more or less things that can improve your game for yourself.
I think they've done actually a decent job at making those more accessible. Because there was a point where if you wanted to, I mean, like, getting full exotic, which is enough to do like 95% of the content in the game, like getting that has always felt pretty okay. And then there's been the fractals, and then if you want to be competitive in World v World, like you can be competitive with exotics, but people say to be competitive in World v World, you need the ascended. That used to be, with the infusions for fractals, that used to be like 400 gold plus whatever it costs to actually get the disciplines up to make the armor. And now you can do that with the discipline training and everything, probably probably 250 gold, something like that, with a streamlined method, that doesn't require you to buy wood or anything. That's insta buy stuff off the trading post, gw2crafts.net, go through whatever they say, blindly follow it, don't care, craft stuff up, 250 gold tops with infusions. It's really cheap, and then there's also alternative methods to get all that stuff. So I think that's covered fairly well. I think in a lot of other games, getting like decent gear is the entire point of your game progression. The entire point of getting gold in a game, like no secret, I talk about it in Overflow all the time. Been playing the ever living shit out of old school RuneScape. On a normal account in old school RuneScape, the most expensive items, which translate to hundreds of hours of grinding gold, are the weapons that do the most damage in most situations. Like that's what you're after. Like if you have a lot of gold in the game, it's to get the best in slot gear. You can get the best in slot gear in Guild Wars 2 if you have the know-how in a week, probably. Like on a fresh account with nothing there. Like it's very, very possible. I mean, Teapot did it. I don't know how long he took to do it, but I mean, he did it in his series when EOD came out with a brand new account. So I actually think they've done pretty well on all that. It's just the mid-game quality of life stuff that you're looking for, the wanting to streamline the process of gearing second characters or getting legendary gear, things like that, are definitely in a range of where it doesn't feel super good. And one of the things that we never touch on really, we talk about farming and like 30 gold an hour going down to 20. Most people don't do that. Most people don't farm at all. Most people go, they pick 2 or 3 metas that they like doing, that they feel like individually give them enough rewards, and then they'll spend an hour and walk away with like 5 gold. And yeah. I think that's a scale that kind of gets ignored a lot, because we think of farming more efficiently than most people actually do. Most of the time it's very small scale stuff, and that's why it feels unapproachable. But I feel like we've maybe gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but I do want to say that, like, just as maybe a lead in to Soto, I'm looking forward to see what they do with the new reward structure and the idea of the whole like island hopping Wizards Vault things, to see if maybe that streamlines the process of getting materials that are high value and raw gold and rewards that people want. To where it's not necessarily faster, but more in line with just playing the game, and you get stuff without having to do all the thinky stuff for your average player, obviously.
Yeah. This is probably a good time to transition into Secrets of the Obscure.
Yeah. I was just about to say.
I think one issue with Guild Wars 2 that I've had a lot of people complain about, they're like, "Oh, I hit 80. What do I do now?" Right? Because most games, they have a clear, hey, this is what you do for endgame, right? Like World of Warcraft, hey, you go do raids. This is your endgame. Most MMOs just go do raids. Like, I'm playing a lot of Diablo 4 right now. What's the end game? Okay, go grind Nightmare Dungeons to level up and get better gear. Like, and then people are trying to figure out, like, they clearly are pointing you towards, this is what you do when you have reached your end game. Guild Wars 2 doesn't do that. And it's always been an issue with Guild Wars 2 of like, okay, what do we do when we hit 80? It's like, and then you ask people, and they're like, oh, you can do PvP, you can do World's World, you can do raids, you can do strikes, you can do fractals, you can do open world exploration, right? There's pretty much everything in the game is your end game. Your end game is what you make of it. Though, and what I see with Secret of the Obscure is they're kind of doing kind of a battle pass thing, but not calling it a battle pass, but also not charging for it. But it's kind of saying to like, hey, here's stuff that we're going to focus you on doing. We're going to have you, here's a list of goals you can go work on for Secrets of the Obscure. And maybe it'll give more direction to people. So like they're not kind of aimlessly wandering around the desert for 40 days. Yeah, so maybe it'll, the battle pass thing, and plus it's going to be giving like specific rewards from that. It might get people to focus on, especially with a game like this, where, you know, we're what, 11 years old now. Yeah, the game's 11 years old now. What they did with Guild Wars 1 to try to get people to like focus in it. So when you had a smaller community, you wanted, you had these events to get people to all be doing the same stuff at the same time. So they had like the weekly or the weekend events where it's like, hey, this region's giving double faction points.
Yeah.
Hey, double PvP points for this week or this weekend. So that way more people will be going towards that. And I kind of feel like that's what the battle pass or what are they calling it in Secrets of the Obscure?
It's a Wizard's Vault. It's called
Wizard's Vault.
It's
Okay,
actually very
maybe
similar to the vault system from WoW, actually. So, but it's a good thing.
I've never played WoW. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe that will help focus the player base into the same areas, so that you have like full maps. You see a lot of people doing stuff together. You get that MMO feeling, because that's kind of like what the meta events do, right? Like you go to Dragon's End, and you'll typically have a full map. You'll see 50 other players there doing something together. But when the meta's not going on, like what do you see there? Nothing, right? So the meta events kind of focus people to like come together. You still see in Heart of Thorns, people still do the meta events there because they feel good. Path of Fire, not so much. So I guess the Wizard's Vault is going to be kind of the version of the meta events where it's focusing the community a little bit. But it's interesting. It's a different change of pace with it. We'll see how it works out with it, I guess.
I think a key thing I just want to add to that is that also this is the first time where the game actually now goes to the direction of self-contained expansions, right? Everything is in one story bundle, and that there's a couple of things that add into that expansion, where before we've had everything kind of on a continuous scale. You know, funny enough, other MMOs most of the time, at least in WoW, I don't know how it is in Final Fantasy, but in WoW, I believe it's for the most part always been self-contained episodes with sprinkles of continuity from previous expansions. I think Final Fantasy is more similar to Guild Wars 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the story being you have to play from the start to finish to kind of get the idea. And I think for us now, we're at that level where it's actually a breath of fresh air for us to get Guild Wars 2 into that direction of here's an expansion with all these features with it. However, this Wizard's Vault, they can now make it bridge into any other expansion that they want, right? So I'd like to see how this can even tie into older content. That might allow people to focus up and kind of to what you said, Enko, like this weekend you might be doing this weekend, this is the thing that's getting you more rewards. And that way you're now adding more activity. And honestly, open world in Guild Wars 2, nothing better than Guild Wars 2's open world. It probably is one of the best open world MMOs as well. That's been something that they've shined in very well. So I think they have plenty of these maps that they can even pick and choose for these kind of reward levels, and find ways to tie in those kind of materials specific to those. Hopefully that does mean they don't create more, because I think they've created a system that they can even just utilize everything we already have in the game. And I'd not like to see us having like a wizard token and then another expansion comes out, here's 7 more new materials. I think the Wizard's Vault is a good establishment to now just rotate around existing systems.
Right. And like what Enko was saying about how it's sort of like meta events focus people into areas. Part of the reason they focus people into areas is because people want whatever reward or loot or achievement comes from that. And I think a lot of the issue with older maps in Guild Wars is because we haven't power crept that much in terms of stats, but we've definitely power crept in terms of farming methods, gold making methods, what rewards look like. You don't have a reason to go to Brisbane Wildlands anymore because all of the new maps are better for everything that you could possibly want out of a map. But with this, you can attach a new reward to that makes, if Brisbane Wildlands is the only place where you can get this specific skin, you have to do content on that map. That will be the most popular map in the game to get the new shiny skin that you get from the Wizard Vault achievement, And maybe a bit of a callback. I don't know if you guys ever did or remember monthlies from when the game, was still really new. But monthlies also not just focused people who were online, but were a reason that people who maybe weren't super feeling the game would still periodically come in. Oh, okay, I'll come back, I'll do my monthlies, see how I feel, maybe get caught up in some guild missions or whatever, people wanted to do at the time. It kept people coming back more often than they currently do. And the thing about the Wizard's Vault is it's not just dailies. You also get weeklies, and I think they didn't say monthlies, but quarterly achievements. And so it's going to focus people into those areas for those durations. And it's also going to have some staying power because the stuff that's going to be available with the token currency is going to stay available. And so that gives people hopefully reasons to go back to things for maybe a longer period than we had seen before. And just to build off of the self-contained thing, I'm super excited about that. That's actually the reason that I'm excited for this expansion, because it's actually wanted out of Cantha. Is I was like, oh, we're going really far away. Maybe we just ditch the rest of the characters and we get a whole new cast and a story that's, you know, by itself and makes sense. Because I watched a little bit of Teapot's review of this expansion. What he was saying is, you know, when people buy the game because their friend convinced them to buy it, which is a miracle in and of itself, as I'm sure everyone's aware, they don't want their friend to have to go through the archaic core story and then everything thereafter, and then buy the LS, you know, 3 and 4 episodes because, you know, they didn't realize that those weren't included in the package, you know, that they bought, and like go through this whole process that causes them to quit the game before they even get to the new stuff. Having something that's self-contained and has callbacks to all this content that they already have access to. You know, they have access to Brisbane Wildlands. They've never done a story there. They don't even know what the map is, you know, if they're a new player. But they have a reason to go there because they're being directed there with all the existing players that might convince them to stick around and do the old content. I think it's just, it works better. It almost feels like a ball and chain has been lifted now that all of the Elder Dragons are gone, you know, and we have options for new ways of developing events, new ways of developing reward structures, because this is so different. Everything feels different about this. The trailers don't even look like Guild Wars 2 trailers. They look halfway between Diablo and Kingdom Hearts. It's really weird.
It actually gives me a Guild Wars 1 feel on some of the trailers, actually. But your mention of like unique rewards, that actually has been a problem in this game, is that if you look at any map, there is nothing unique as far as your rewards, as far as your drops go from any of them. So that does, and like this is why actually like fast farming became a thing, right? Because people want to know, well, what's the best map to farm for gold, right? And it's always broken down to gold, even though you're getting materials in gold, because gold's a common currency that everything breaks down into in this game. No matter what map you go to, everybody's like, oh, I'll sell on the trading post, get gold. So there's nothing unique. Like I can't go to Brisbane Wildlands and get like something I could only get in Brisbane Wildlands. And you have the same problem in raids now too, where it's like you get your legendary insights, and then we had legendary divinations with wings 5 through 7. So they tried to split, but you had to do the POF wings to get the POF rewards. Well, guess what? Legendary insights everywhere now. You can do escort multiple times. Like you do escort 250 times, which some people have done, to get a stack of insights. It's the same as doing 250 encounters everywhere else. Like there's nothing that makes like you have to do this type of content to get this specific reward. Fractals are like that, raids are like that, even PvP and World vs. World, like the unique rewards you get from World vs. World and PvP, like that's, if you're trying to go for skins, that's the carrot to get people into those. We don't have anything really like that in PvE, where you must go do this map to get this skin, because you can get that skin from anywhere. So with the Withers Vault coming in, maybe we can get it where it's like, hey, you want to get this skin, you got to do this battle pass thing. You got to go through the tiers of this. And if you want to do this stuff, oh, we're going to say do 30 event, or like do 30 events in Brisbane Wildlands or something like that, or do this many event in like wherever, right? And so it'll get that focusing on it, but you also feel like, hey, we're going to be doing specific content to get this reward, instead of where it's like I could go anywhere in the world and get whatever I want. And then after that, when it becomes like you could do anything in the game to get the same rewards, it just becomes of which way is the fastest, which way is the easiest. And that's one of the reasons why you see so many maps and core Tyria are just empty. Because if you want to get materials, like you just want to get straight up raw materials, it's probably Drizzlewood Coast. Like Drizzlewood Coast is probably like your best bet for that. Or any place else that's just got mob density, which I guess I only thought of that now because we've been talking about that in Diablo 4 a lot with mob density. But like you're going to go to places where you can get the stuff the fastest, and all the other maps that are available are ignored. Like I'm probably one of the few people that like enjoys map completion, especially for Quarteria, because there's so much stuff to look at. Like ANET's done so much stuff like visually, like with exploration, so much lore that's just like hidden. Like you don't really see it unless you go explore. And that's all kind of, and I would say that's one of the high points for the game, but it just gets ignored by so many people because there's no reason to go back to those maps. And maybe they could change that a little bit with the Wizard's Vault, especially with apparently the Wizard's Tower can move around, is what I saw.
Yeah.
So maybe that's how they'll like that will be the marker. You go into like Queensdale, and the Wizard's Tower is like hovering over it as like the sign, like here's where the Wizard's Vault events are coming and stuff like that. Like they could do some cool stuff with this, and it feels like they're iterating a bit with Secrets of the Obscure instead of just coming up with brand new stuff, like more glut to come in. Like they're
I would say it's a good thing though.
Reusing stuff.
Yeah, I think we're at the stage where, you know, and this always comes up, well, what could they do next in this expansion? Like they had mounts, they had gliding, they had, you know, and it's like, I think we've gotten to the point where very little QOL is going to be, you know, Wizard's Vault is actually a big one, but it's going to get to that point where they're not going to have much more to improve much more to add to the game, but however, they can improve on existing systems, right? Like the Weapon Master training just opened a whole range of exploration in terms of builds and classes now, right? That I don't know if we'll get something similar to that in the next expansion after this, but that's okay. And I actually like this idea that you mentioned that, yeah, if it's specific events, I think that's one of the problems as well. When you have basically like free reign, yeah, go do however you want to, you know, you want this reward, do whatever you want to do to get this reward, right? When you have that freedom of choices, it can also be a little bit overwhelming of like, oh, where am I going to do it? And as you said, someone will figure out the fastest method to get that item. So I do enjoy this idea of like, yeah, here is this specific item. You want it, just go here. You want this, go there. And I think that streamlines more even with the stuff that you said, the weekend XP or other sort of bonuses they can add. They can play around with it. And it goes back to that rotational cycle that they can just do. And now you've just created something every single week or every month you have at least 1 week dedicated to something like that. And that helps in the downtime. I think stuff like that is important when you don't have anything going on between a big release or any of that. And that's been a huge issue, is that there's so much downtime in the game. Not so much with this expansion, because now this model is supposed to be every 2 to 3 months we'll have something. And as we're finishing up this expansion right out the corner, the next one is ready to go. But if they can keep filling out the downtime and the gaps in between with these kind of structures, I think it just keeps adding into that idea of that there's something to do in the game. Maybe not every single week, but at least once a month you'll be obliged to come in and do something to work towards.
Right. And the other thing is, like, this is a game that people take breaks from. It's built into the community. Pretty much everyone in this community takes breaks from the game. And the thing about having the old stuff still be available, and you have the time, it's not time gated, you have the time to catch up. You know, if you miss the first month, you just have to do more of the same events, you know, and then if you miss, say, the first quarter, and then you move on to the second quarter, and maybe the tower's in a different place or something like that, you have more of those events to do to catch up on the currency that you're trying to get all those battle pass, you know, unique rewards. That's going to keep the stream of players focused on wherever the current activity is pretty strong, even later on. Like, because there's going to be the people who finish it as soon as possible and then they're done. You know, like there's going to always be those people. But there's going to be a lot of stragglers as well. And I think this also focuses the stragglers to where there's, hopefully, we still need to see what the rewards are in the vault for the tokens. But hopefully they do that well, and that makes it to where people have a reason to keep doing the content, keep doing whatever the current activity is, and just Enko mentioning the fact that the tower is going to move around. It almost feels like a more economical version of what they wanted to do with Living World in the first place when we had season 1, and they were talking about, oh, every time we release, we're going to change a map, and then they completely had to redo some of the areas of like huge areas of the map, and it just wasn't sustainable with the resources they had. It feels like this is a more sustainable economical version of that, where we're going to reuse the same space and put different stuff in it, so you're going to have new stuff to do. We're just going to reuse the same space. It's, dare I say, it's also almost like a better version of what they wanted to do with DRMs. Like, DRMs are super shortcutty, content that has very, very low replay value. But I'm hoping that they do something a little bit more complex with this to get the replay value higher. And just one more thing, because you're talking about running out of quality of life features to add. One of the things that we haven't talked about is the fact that Skyscale is going to have a second streamlined method to obtain it, which means that your new friends are going to be able to participate with you. And I know a lot of people, when Dragonfall came out, their friends basically felt like they couldn't play it with them. Even if they had Griffin, that map is just miserable unless you have a commander who specifically decides, okay, I'm going to run the squad in such a way that you only need Raptor and Springer. That's the only things you need. Most of the commanders didn't do that, and the map just felt garbage to navigate without having Skyscale unlocked, so you had the masteries. But in this case, you're going to be able to get the masteries enough to where you can participate in the content. It feels good. You're able to play with other people. Just overall, it just feels really good from the way they make it sound, at least. And it feels very sustainable, very economical. We have a little bit higher of like a box price per year that we have to pay for this, but I feel like most people are willing to do that. My only question, just because we don't have any information about it, what is in the Wizard's Vault?
Yeah,
like that.
I actually
that.
thought
The
Xbox could have been more. I would have paid more for it. Though you did mention earlier about like you buy the expansions. Oh crap! I had to buy Living Story Season 2 and 3 and 4, like all the other because they're not included. I honestly feel like ANET. I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on this. Like when HOT came out, you buy HOT. It came with the core game, right? It shouldn't have been you buy the core game and you have to buy the X pack. And then when POF came out, it should not have been you have to buy the core game, the HOT, and POF. And then when EOD came out, same thing. Like if you look at, I think World of Warcraft does this, where every expansion, when you buy the new expansion, like if you're a brand new player, you get everything else that came before with it, right? I think that's how they do it. I feel like they should have done that. So if you're a brand new Guild Wars 2 player, or you're coming into the game, you're like, oh, I want to buy this game. When you bought Secrets of the Obscure, you should have got core, HOT, POF, EOD, and all the Living Story seasons, and all of the IBS stuff. Like you should have gotten on all content up to that point should be included. And then when the next mini X pack comes out, you buy that one. And they could have charged $50 for this each time, because the basis is that it's including everything up to that point. So that would be incentive for new players. I guess existing players might feel a little annoyed about it, because it's like, well, I'm paying $50 to get all the same content that someone, or they'll only get the new stuff while someone else is paying $50 to get everything. But I do think it would be better for newer players to do that, and that's honestly probably something ANET needs to.
So someone actually just said, unfortunately, you have to buy the previous expansions. Oh,
World of Warcraft? Oh, I thought you got everything beforehand too.
Yeah, same. Unless they're referring to Guild Wars 2, but no, I think like they could still. I could understand why they do it this way, right? Because they're charging you for this expansion $20, and then or 25. Is it $25? How much is Secrets of the Obscure? $25. And the previous, the whole saga comes in together. The Elder Dragon saga comes in together in one bundle. However, we still have the Living World seasons, and the fact that they still want these to be purchased separately. I feel like they almost have to just include it now in one bundle, because I find like this is the confusing part for a lot of players. it still is, I'm buying this. Oh, wait, I still have to buy Living World Season to even continue the story that I'm, you know. So I think that's also a big misstep, is not including the Living World bundles together with those expansions.
What Danny said, I think, is probably the best solution, actually. New X pack costs $25-$30, and then everything else prior to that, plus that, you pay $50. So you're paying $25 for all the old content in one package, and you pay $25 for the new X pack. And then the new X pack, the whatever new X pack comes out a year from now, hopefully it's every year, then it's $25 for the new stuff, or you could pay $50 for everything else, for everything. If like you're brand new to the game. I actually think that would be a good compromise.
Yeah, I like that. I will say though that the nice thing about the way that they have done this new one, just with including things like the sky scale, including the base game with it, it gives people, when we had EOD launch, and they had the Steam release and they released all these bundles, we didn't have, bundles where you could buy the whole Living World, episodes and everything before. It's an improvement, but one of the big criticisms of it was, I'm a new player, I'm coming in, I don't know if I like your game. So my choices are to spend $50 now and more down the line, or to spend $100 now in order to save, $20 down the line if I like it. Where's my cheap, accessible option to try out more than just the base game to see if I like what your game's like now, and then decide if I want to buy all the other stuff? And I think the fact that Soto is self-contained and it's a new story, new characters, I think that gives at least, it's I still think that, what he said in chat's better, but I think it's not terrible that you can spend $25 as a new player, play the new expansion with your friends, get the sky scale, whatever, be relatively current, because if you're going to have one mount, sky scale is the one to have. It's a very versatile mount. If you go through all that and then you decide, okay, I really enjoyed this, I want more, then you can go back and buy stuff with a more informed opinion of what you don't like about the game, and the initial price you paid is only $25. So I think there is that advantage where it is low cost to get into it and get more than just the base game trial, because there are people who get into the game through a free trial, essentially, is what the base game is at this point, and they enjoy it and then they buy everything else. But a lot of people, it's archaic, it's it's got a lot of systems that are outdated. Soda will be, hopefully the freshest, newest, brightest, highest quality content they have to offer, and you're going to get to see that before committing to a $50 or $100 bundle like you would with the EOD launch. So I still think it's at least an improvement from the EOD launch.
Yeah,
and we know what we're getting.
I guess a problem, like, if you look on Steam, like, I'll put it up on my screen. It's probably too small for you guys to read this, but the Steam listings for Guild Wars 2, it's honestly confusing. Like, you've got the core game, Guild Wars core game. Then you've got Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, $30. Then you have Guild Wars 2 End of Dragons, $30. Then you have Guild Wars 2 Elder Dragon Complete Collection, $100. And this is the one that includes the Living Story seasons. Does this include IBS too?
Does it?
It says seasons 2 through 5, so I think they're calling IBS season 5, even though it's not referred to that in game. But then they also now have Secrets of the Obscure expansion, $25. Secrets of the Obscure pre-purchase, $25. Secrets of Obscure pre-purchase rewards.
Somebody should fix that.
Why are there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? There's 7 entries in the Steam library for Guild Wars 2.
They seem like different games almost. It seems like Path of Fire is its own game. It seems like, like these are different games that are sequential, that have been released separately.
And that kind of worked for Guild Wars 1 because Factions and Nightfall were standalone games. Like, you didn't need prophecies to get it. Like, it just meant that you had access to the zones if you already had. But you could buy Nightfall and have access to Dervish and Paragon and the core classes and play. You could have Factions by itself and have Rituals Assassin and the core classes and play. You could have just Prophecies and just play, which is... Wait, do they not even sell Prophecies by itself? Oh, it's Game of the Year edition now. But with this one, it's like Guild Wars 2, you have to have the previous stuff to kind of do it. Like, if you only buy Secrets of the Obscure and you don't buy the other X-Packs, Like, what does the game look like? Does it just say it's like, oh, you
It's
don't have
just
access
core.
to all
It's
this
just
stuff?
core plus Soto, more or less, right? So, I think to add to this though, I think this is one benefit of where if self-contained now allows them to just keep generating those yearly X packs because they don't have to worry about lingering things. It's just go to one area of the game, finish that story, bundle up, and go to the next one. However, yeah, I think in the long run they might have to adjust just like how are they going to bundle these up because yeah, I mean if you buy Soto right now, you are basically a core game plus that expansion. You, I mean, there's so many maps from the Living World seasons that you don't even get to experience. So many maps from POF, HOT, EOD. So they might have to find a way to, and this is where I say they need to just bundle up the Living World seasons together, maybe even with every upcoming release of an expansion. I don't know how much they might be making a lot of money off of keeping it separate, and maybe their business model, their numbers are they have the numbers at the end of the day. Maybe for them it actually makes sense on why they're doing it this way, even though it's a bit of a detriment to players who want to actually buy the game and experience those kind of content. But it does feel like a disconnect in that area.
I still like Danny TT's suggestion the best, I guess. $25 for the new X pack, and then if you're if you're existing player, and then $50 for everything up to that point for new players. It makes it clean, it makes it simple. It's not confusing about what you're getting. But I mean, like even now, I guess if you're an existing player and you weren't around for the Living Story seasons, you have to still buy those, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
you still have to buy them. Like if you missed like 3 years of the
so-
game, like you're pretty much buying those Living
Like,
World seasons.
I just think getting the new expansion should get you up to speed with all content up to that point. That's what I feel like.
Although maybe what they're hoping with this is maybe they're hoping that new players don't try and tough it out through the long story. Because like I know I personally don't enjoy like there's a certain nostalgia to the base game story because I played it when it came out, right? But I don't personally enjoy Living World Season 2. I don't enjoy Living World Season 1. I don't enjoy Heart of Thorns. The part where I actually get to start enjoying the story, for me at least, is Season 3, which is a long way to tough it out with old, systems and stuff that don't let you use your mounts and stuff. Or maybe they do now. I at least they didn't last I knew. You weren't allowed to use mounts if they didn't exist at the time of release. So like, it's a long way to go, and I feel like maybe what they're thinking, on top of more money, better, is they maybe don't want people to go through that whole story until they're already sold on the game because of the new stuff. Maybe that's what they're hoping.
And they would have to because
Yeah,
I
can see
mean,
that.
like for example, okay, honestly, season 2, not the best way for them because I remember season 2 where it was rich in
two.
yeah, it was rich in lore. However, a lot of the episodes in season 2 had you like going somewhere, click on these items, read a bit, and then that was the episode. And then you have to wait like 3 months later.
Listen to Timey talk for 6 minutes.
Yeah,
All right, we're
and then
done.
like by the end of the episode, you're like, wait, what? That's it? That's all I had to do was go into this room here, click on these items, and listen a bit. So it's, and honestly, yeah, I think for a lot of players going through core to where you are now, you're gonna have to tough it out, and it could even deter some people. Be like, this is how the game's story is presented. I don't want this, right? I think having someone experience something like Secrets of the Obscure, liking that, and then maybe going back to the early parts of the game, somewhere in that time they might realize, okay, yeah, this is basically like how it used to be, is better than jumping in maybe at the start and being like, getting that impression and being like, yeah, maybe the game entirely is presented this way. Maybe it's not for them. So I think going through the best parts is better than going to the earlier parts. Granted, I love the story of the game. I think it's a very kind of generic, bad guy, good guy story. You have to fight the big evils of the world. However, I enjoy it very much. But yeah, when you go back and play those episodes, you realize just how much little content was in them.
Right. It's almost like equipping them with nostalgia goggles before they go in. Like it's almost like, oh, this is what. How do we get here? Wow, this looks so different, and then they're interested in it because it's bad, like almost, not bad, but just outdated. Like that's almost the reason that they're interested in it at that point is, the difference and seeing it evolve to where we got to.
Well, something I just realized that with other games I've seen, but not really with Guild Wars 2 content creators. So for other video game series like Mortal Kombat, right? Like yes, it's a fighting game, but they actually have a pretty big storyline that follows through it, and they got a lot of like cutscenes in the game. And there's been YouTubers that basically like they put all those videos together, and you could watch like the Mortal Kombat story as like a movie.
Yeah, I've
Right.
I've seen those channels.
So like if we look at this one right here, this is Mortal Kombat 11, all cutscenes, full movie, and it's almost 4 hours long, right? So I kind of wonder why like maybe ArenaNet could put this together. I don't know how long it would take them to do, or maybe a content creator could do that. Is basically put together a movie of the storyline where you can go through the game, right? Go through the storyline, but like cut out all the just running from point A to point B parts. Put in like the major fights that are story progression, and then like just make like this is the core story. This is like the original storyline. Here's the Heart of Thorn storyline. Here's the Path of Fire storyline. Here's the Living World storyline, and so forth. And like if ANET did this, like they kind of didn't they kind of do this where it's like you had a cutscene, you had to talk to an NPC, and you could get like you can get like a catch up story thing for everything. I think they did that for
LS1.
one thing. Yeah,
That was
and
the
it's
LS1 when we didn't have it playable. Yeah.
So
It
what
wasn't a
if
cutscene, but something similar. They had like a paragraph. Although that was a paragraph, they didn't actually. But there was someone who released it. No, on
It was in
I don't know,
game.
I
You
think
could
I think
watch
it'd
all
be-
the cutscenes from LS1 before it actually before they put the episodes back in.
I think it'd be interesting if they did like if somebody or ANET just did like a full story up to this point, so that when you're talking about Abree, where it's like, oh, if I buy everything, I feel like I might have to start from the beginning to catch up to the story because I want to understand what's going on with the story. So if they had something, or we had something on YouTube that people could catch up to the story up to this point, so when new players come in, they're not super confused about like, wait, what happened to the dragons? Like Guild Wars 2 is all about dragons, and now like they're all gone. What happened? And the only way to get that right now would be like, okay, we'll go back to the beginning and play through it all. Like I don't know of any YouTuber that has just said like, here's a Guild Wars 1 or here's a Guild Wars 2 movie, like edit it up, like put together, like here's I can even see them doing the 5 different races, like the different storylines, because they're all running in parallel, like time wise, right? And you can show a little bit from a Serb perspective, from the human perspective, and then how they all meet up together with the Pact, and then have all the three different Pact factions go together, and then it culminates in like the Zaitan fight, right? But presented as a Guild Wars 2 movie type thing, and you could do that for each expansion. And that would be a way for someone to catch up, where they could just sit there and watch a YouTube video for an hour and a half. That's a movie of Guild Wars 2. That'd be kind of interesting if we could find somebody that would do that.
Somewhere here is a
record
future
gameplay
YouTuber
footage.
that is going to help create this mission.
So hopeful, and I guess mild spoiler alert. But it's on ANET's post about the expansion. They said that the expansion is going to start with a wrap up to End of Dragons and a bittersweet goodbye from an old friend, or there's something like that. That's what they said in the post. So I think but I think what they might do is have the opportunity for, when you start this expansion, you get a 3-5 minutes, somewhere in there, a decent length cutscene that maybe, if they do it right, it would probably be a good idea to overview, we've gone through all this, and we've lost people and whatever, and cut back to all the, characters that, have, died and stuff that we fought dragons with, cut to each of the different dragons and, their trademark stylized art, like watercolor-esque artwork that they do, and cut to all these dragons, us killing them, and how it happened, and that, just like little 15-second clips, and this is where we are now. And it's not like the full story, the details are sort of left out, but the big question of where did the dragons go, what is Guild Wars 2 story like, gets answered, hopefully in a couple minute cutscene at least, which is better than nothing, and it doesn't require people to actually go and look for it. It starts off the expansion, at least that's what it sounds like is going to happen. That's what I hope happens.
Mhm.
And then we have that, now what? Now how are we going to look forward and stuff? And then you go into the next, you go into the next story instance, and it kicks off with a new story. Like after people have sort of, lost, what is my purpose now? In this world, we've done all this crazy stuff. Somehow we survived. The world's still here. Wow, how did we survive that? And then then it transitions into the new stuff. I think that's what they're gonna do. And we haven't
It's just,
we haven't
just a
touched on
small
it.
catch-up thing, I guess, is something. But
Yeah.
I would still would like it if
Mhm.
something existed where it's like, hey, here's like all the cutscenes strung together, and you can like watch the story type thing. Like something a
Yeah.
little longer, because like the thing you're talking about, it's going to be something where it's like 3 to 5 seconds of like what they did with Legacy. Like, oh, Scarlet's here, then she did this, then she did this. I'm more times like you can see the journey of the commander through all the X-Backs.
Right.
Like a slightly longer format, not something that you can put in like a YouTube short or like a TikTok short, like something that's just like hour and a half, 2 hours. Here's all the stuff that happened. If people were interested in seeing that, and that would then go to the point where it's like, hey, I don't have to feel like, oh, I'm a new player. I don't feel like I have to play through stuff from 11 years ago to catch up to the storyline as it is now. Because yeah, like a little catch up, little 3-minute thing is great and all, but they also can't include everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could go
that'd be
and
interesting if someone actually
if they did it in like an episodic series on YouTube, they could probably, each content like HOT, seasons, POF, EOD, each of those could be like an hour in themselves. Like there's enough cutscenes to maybe make an hour. I don't know if they even want to include like a little bit of dialogue from like when you're in the mission or something, like, if there's anything important to say before a cutscene. But they could probably do stuff like that. That's something that I think would be very little effort compared to like any other thing that they have to do to get someone to go back and go through the whole story. However, I understand they also would like someone to actually go back and play the game in itself. So I think it'd be more in line where if someone puts it like you said, because I know those MK videos. I've seen them actually, Enko on YouTube. I actually use them to catch up because I didn't play MK. I think it was 11. And then I had to like actually catch up in the cutscenes before like this one got announced. So it's something like that would be helpful. And there's a lot of people who actually prefer that instead of actually playing the content in itself, since it could take a while for them to go through all of it. Anyway, I think we've gone on.
Diablo.
Yeah, we've gone on quite a
D4 video I saw recently, right? That this is just what happened to the paladin from Diablo 2, because they talked about the story, like what happened to him in Diablo 4 a bit. And this guy just made like a 20-minute video of like gameplay interspersed with lore and was just talking about it. He cuts out the parts about like the where you're just like kind of fighting through the trash mobs, but then the storyline pivotal fights, he like includes that in his video and stuff like that. And it's very well produced, and apparently, his entire video is like lore for video games. Like something like that, I would love to see that for Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 1 also, like there's a lot.
Oh, Guild Wars 1 is a lot actually.
Like, going back to 2005, guys, there's a lot of story stuff to cover. That especially when we got to EOD, for instance, there was a lot of references to Guild Wars 1 stuff that if you never played factions, you just didn't pick up on. Like, and same thing with Path of Fire. If you didn't play Nightfall, you just didn't pick up on any of that stuff. And if you didn't go back and specifically look for that stuff, like read up on the wiki or go back and play Guild Wars 1, there was just like very little resources. I would love it if someone did that before Secrets of the Obscure came out.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Anyway,
I think a lot of creativity to do it in Guild Wars 2 style, though.
Well, I mean, who knows?
They probably wouldn't have enough time to put it together before Secrets of the Obscure, honestly.
Right.
It took a long time to play through the game.
I think they could. They have to have the assets, right? So I think they could just bundle them up. again, I think this is something someone would have to do. Someone has to brave this out, tough it out, go back, replay Guild Wars 1, and then come back, replay Guild Wars 2, give us the whole complete arc from then and now, and put it into like a 10-hour, season, which would be even maybe interesting. You can even hype people up every week as an episode until you get to the finale, which is where we're at now. So yeah, it could be. But anyway, just before we get into if there's any other points, because we have gone on quite a tangent here. Actually, we've even hit storylines. So I think for 4 wins, and then of course getting into Secrets of the Obscure for the most part for those kind of points that we've discussed. I think that's pretty much it. However, is there anything else you guys would like to discuss before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I'm just excited to see what's in the vault. I think that's the biggest thing. All the frameworks for a successful expansion are here, but some dials need to be turned. We need good skins, in that vault. We need good things in that vault for it to really be as successful as I think we're hoping it'll be.
Yeah, good non-gem source skins that obtainable through gameplay would be a huge thing for this game, because like there's so many things that you can get from the gem store look great, but it's in the gem store.
Yeah.
Mount skins. Hopefully we got mount skins in the Wizards Vault, because I think there's only 2 mount skins you could get in the game through gameplay right now.
I think Teapot said there would be. I don't know how he knows that. I couldn't find it. But I think he said that there would be one in there.
Some of the AI partners might have some early read-ahead stuff.
So might have accidentally leaked something without knowing.
Yeah, or maybe he's just like conjecture.
Oh
maybe,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe he does know. Maybe he knows
I hope we have him too. And yeah.
Well, I think for the most part, I'm excited to see that, because that's been actually a long-term demand. Is that like, can we have more, skins and items from the gem store that could actually be acquired through actually playing the game? So it's exciting to see them actually create this sort of thing.
Yeah, the Sky Scale is the second skin that you could get. That's what it is going to be.
Okay.
Oh, they already announced that, I think. Yeah.
So the first one was the War Claw we could already get, and the second one, which we will be able to get, is part of Secrets of the Obscure. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's why I thought there were 2.
Okay, fair enough. Well, anyway, I've had a great time, chat. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. I think if that's all there is, I think it's about time to wrap this up. Wow, 2 hours, by the way. Perfect. I've actually said before we went live that this will take roughly around 2 hours. However, I'm pretty sure with the storyline and the stuff that we're getting into, honestly, we could have been here for like another 5 hours. However,
I couldn't have been. I would have had to dip.
Yeah, Abree, I got a dip. So anyway, hey, gamers, thank you guys so much for joining us for the Barons Club podcast. I'll still be streaming after this. We've got our weekly giveaways, Secrets of the Obscure, 2 copies of the game that I'm giving away. And I've got some infusions for Festival of the 4 Winds. This is kind of giveaway for today as well. So stay tuned later in the stream. We'll be doing that giveaway soon enough. Actually, the infusions will all be produced. We'll be giving away the infusions right after we switch the scene. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Barons Club podcast. I don't know, maybe we'll do more. I don't know. Abree and I also have a podcast that we tried to start. We're still figuring that out. Maybe another podcast on the way at some point. But appreciate you guys for coming up here and having this discussion. Actually, Enko, because Enko told me we wanted to do a podcast. We're like, why not? So you can find their channels, Enko, Abree. I'll leave you the floor to you guys. Abree, if you want to go first, explain what is it that you want to do, what is it that you're doing or working on, or just a brief touch up on the things that you are currently working on.
I have a general catalog of gold making videos that cover conceptual topics and just actionable stuff that people at all levels in gold making can use. Just Abree on YouTube. And in the future, might do a little bit more gold making, but I think a lot of the ideas behind the methods are going to remain the same moving forward. So might do some streaming, might do some gameplay videos, more generic in the future.
Fair enough. Yeah, Enko?
We're doing more Zephyrite box opening until the end of 4 wins. We still got another at 600,000 open. Another 70% loss to be expected, I guess. But yeah, for the future stuff, I got a new raid static, so I'm trying to get coordinated with them a bit. But kind of something I've been brainstorming. I kind of want to see if we can bring back some like mini raid tournaments or strike tournaments. I've actually been thinking about throwing some actual prize money into this, like just $500 a month or something, to go have people post full raid clears like for time. Like, wouldn't be live. We'd be doing this on YouTube, I guess. So, but yeah, I'm pondering how that would work. I might want to try to coordinate with Teapot to see what we could do about it. But yeah, I would like to try to get more people back into raiding, because right now we don't really have a lot of reasons to do it. But you know, I have been at a new job for 4 months now, getting paid decently well. So I don't think I would have a problem throwing six to 10 grand a year into something like this, just to have a little bit of a carrot for people to like push for full raid clears again. So I don't know. More news to follow on that. I'm still thinking about it.
Nice. Oh, I'd actually be interested to see something like that happen. Full real prize money. That's exactly what we need. And I think that's probably the motivation to entice people to compete in these kind of tournaments. So why not? Anyway, gamers, appreciate you guys for being here. The description of Enko's Twitch, YouTube, all their socials, and Abree as well will be down below. You can check them out. Enko primarily streams on Twitch. You can find, I think, his YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel, Twitter, all of that. Abree is primarily a YouTube gamer. He's actually a high quality content creator on YouTube. You can check out his YouTube channel, and I don't know, maybe in the future his Twitch streams. I'm Gildemem, and yeah, I have a crown on my head and I wear sunglasses. That's it for today's podcast. See you soon, gamers. I'll be right back for the stream here. We'll be actually instantly opening up the giveaway for the infusions. However, let me just switch the scene. And yeah, until next time, Iron's Club Podcast is out. See you guys.